"Officers, that cabin is in violation. Seize it." She said it loud enough for the entire lakeshore to hear. Two deputies stepped out of their patrol SUV, hands resting near their belts. I was standing on the porch of my lakeside cabin, holding a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise reflect off the water, and apparently about to have my own property seized. What Karen didn't know? By sunset that same day, she wouldn't just lose this fight, she'd lose control of the entire HOA. And technically, I owned more of this county than she could imagine. The cabin wasn't flashy, hand-cut timber beams, stone fireplace, dock extending into Crystal Ridge Lake. It had been in my family for decades, but recently the surrounding area had transformed. Luxury homes, gated streets, and of course, the Lakeshore Pines HOA. Strict rules, mandatory paint colors, dock length regulations, lawn height standards measured like military inspections. The only problem? My cabin predated their development. By 27 years, I was never part of their HOA, never signed a covenant, never agreed to dues, which made me a problem. 3 weeks after I renovated the dock, I found a laminated notice nailed to a tree. Unauthorized structural modification, subject to immediate HOA action. I walked straight to their clubhouse that evening. Inside sat Karen Holloway, HOA president, immaculate blazer, cold smile, clipboard in hand. "You must remove your extended dock within 72 hours, she said. "I'm not in your HOA, I replied calmly. She didn't blink. "You are within the Lakeshore Pines jurisdiction." "No," I said. "I'm adjacent." Her smile thinned. "You'll find that adjacency doesn't exempt you from compliance." I leaned forward slightly. "Actually, it does." 3 days later, a second notice appeared. This one claimed unauthorized shoreline usage, non-compliant exterior lighting, failure to register property with HOA, failure to register. That one made me laugh. I called the county property office to double-check boundaries. The clerk confirmed what I already knew. "My parcel is separate, sir. No HOA covenant attached." Exactly. I ignored the notices. That's when Karen escalated. Saturday morning. I was staining the deck railing when 2 county deputies pulled into my gravel driveway. Karen followed in her white SUV, sunglasses on, arms crossed. Deputy Collins approached me. "Sir, we received a report that this structure is unlawfully expanded beyond HOA regulations." I kept my tone even. "I'm not part of their HOA." Karen stepped forward dramatically. "He absolutely is. His shoreline affects community value." Deputy Collins looked at me. "Do you have documentation?" I nodded. "County deed, no covenant, no HOA attachment." I handed it over. Karen's voice sharpened. "This cabin violates community code," Deputy Collins read quietly, then turned to her. "Ma'am, HOA rules only apply to properties within recorded association boundaries." She froze. "That's impossible. It's public record." Her jaw tightened. "He's defying governance." The deputy calmly replied, "He's exercising property rights." Karen wasn't used to losing in public. "You can't just ignore us?" she hissed at me once the deputies stepped aside. "I'm not ignoring you," I said quietly. "I'm declining authority you don't have." That's when she made her mistake. "You'll regret embarrassing this board." It wasn't loud, but several residents nearby heard it, and I don't respond well to threats. Here's what Karen didn't know. My family didn't just own this cabin. We owned significant acreage surrounding the lake, including several undeveloped parcels, and something else. The land under the Lakeshore Pines clubhouse, leased decades ago by my grandfather. Cheap, long-term, renewable. Guess who never renewed it? The HOA. That night, I pulled out the original land agreements. The clubhouse, parking lot, and half their private marina all sat on parcel 19C, still under my family trust. Lease expired 2 years ago. They had been operating on borrowed land, without renewal, without updated contract, and without realizing it. Karen thought she could seize my cabin. She didn't realize her entire HOA headquarters was sitting on my property. Monday morning, I called my attorney. We verified everything. Lease expiration confirmed. No renewal filed, no updated payment recorded, which meant their clubhouse occupancy was technically unauthorized. I didn't rush. I didn't threaten. I waited, because leverage works best when timed. 3 days later, Lakeshore Pines hosted their annual Community Compliance Walk, Karen leading it like a parade marshal. When they reached the edge of my property, she stopped. "We'll be filing formal enforcement action against this structure." That's when I stepped forward. "Before you do," I said calmly, "you might want to review Parcel 19C. Confused looks. Karen frowned. "What about it?" I handed her a certified copy of the lease agreement. Expired. Highlighted. She scanned the document, her face slowly drained of color. That's old. It's active until renewed." Silence. Residents leaned closer. I spoke clearly. "Your clubhouse sits on my land." When I said, "Your clubhouse sits on my land," you could actually feel the air change. Residents started whispering. "What does that mean? Is that true? Does he really own it?" Karen tried to recover quickly. "That lease is outdated," she snapped. "We've operated here for years." "Yes," I replied calmly, "on an expired agreement." I held up the county-stamped documents. 2 years expired, no renewal filed, no payments made. One of the board members grabbed the copy from her hand. His face turned pale as he read the highlighted expiration date. And that's when the confidence disappeared. That night, Lakeshore Pines held an emergency HOA meeting. Full attendance, tension everywhere. I wasn't required to be there, but I showed up anyway, not as an aggressor, as a landowner. Karen stood at the podium. "There's been a misunderstanding regarding the land lease." A resident interrupted immediately. "Do we own the clubhouse or not?" Silence. The treasurer flipped through paperwork nervously. "We believed it was automatically renewable." "Belief," I said calmly from the back of the room, "isn't legally binding." Every head turned toward me. Karen's jaw tightened. "You're enjoying this?" "No," I answered. "I'm correcting it." They put their HOA attorney on speakerphone. The room quieted. The attorney asked one question. "Was the renewal filed and recorded with the county?" The treasurer whispered, "No." Long pause. Then the attorney said carefully, "Then the lease has expired. Continued occupation without agreement exposes the HOA to liability." Liability. That word hit harder than any threat, because it wasn't emotional, it was financial. Karen tried one last angle. "You can't just take our clubhouse?" I shook my head. "I'm not taking anything. I'm enforcing ownership." A resident stood up. "Are we at risk of losing amenities?" Another voice. "What about property values?" I stepped forward. "I'm not interested in harming this community." Karen glared at me. "Then what do you want?" There it was. The moment power flips. When authority asks permission. I laid them out calmly. New 20-year lease agreement. Fair market rate. Gasps. Full transparency audit of HOA finances. More murmurs. Immediate withdrawal of all violation notices issued to my property. Karen's face burned red. "And one more thing," I added. "Written acknowledgement that my cabin is not subject to HOA authority." The room went quiet again. This wasn't revenge. This was leverage. Karen tried intimidation one last time. "If you force us into higher costs, we'll raise HOA dues." I held eye contact. "You'll have to." Confusion spread across the room. She didn't understand. But the treasurer did. He had already done the math. If they wanted to keep their clubhouse, they needed my lease. And market value wasn't what they were used to paying 30 years ago. Here's the part Karen never bothered researching. My family trust didn't just own the clubhouse land. We owned 2 adjacent marina lots, the overflow parking area, a strip of shoreline easement, and 300 acres of undeveloped land surrounding the North Ridge locally People joked that we owned half the county. It wasn't far from the truth, which meant I wasn't desperate. They were. After 2 hours of heated discussion, the attorney spoke again. Given the circumstances, I strongly recommend negotiating new lease terms immediately. Karen slammed her folder shut. This is extortion, I responded calmly. You called the cops to seize my cabin. Silence. You tried to enforce authority you didn't have. Still silence. I'm offering a contract. The residents weren't angry at me anymore. They were angry at her, because she escalated something that never needed escalation. After the meeting, 3 board members approached me privately. We didn't know the lease had expired. I believe you, I said. We can't lose the clubhouse. You won't, I replied, as long as we fix this correctly. They looked relieved. Karen stood across the parking lot, alone for the first time. Not surrounded by authority, just consequences. The next morning, I issued a formal notice of lease expiration. Not eviction, not shutdown, just official acknowledgement, along with a temporary occupancy agreement while negotiations finalized. Fair, legal, documented. Residents began asking for financial transparency, questions about reserve funds, questions about past enforcement practices. Karen's support was fading. Fast. 3 days later, she showed up at my dock. No clipboard, no sunglasses, just frustration. You planned this, she said quietly. I looked at the lake. No, you forced it. You could bankrupt this HOA. I won't. She looked surprised. I don't want control, I continued. I want boundaries. She didn't answer, because deep down, she knew she crossed one. 1 week after the emergency meeting, the HOA called for a formal vote. Not about me, about Karen. The community room was packed. This time, she didn't stand confidently at the podium. She stood stiff, defensive. The treasurer spoke first. We failed to renew the land lease. That exposed this association to serious liability. Murmurs filled the room. A resident raised his hand. Who was responsible for overseeing that lease? Silence. Everyone already knew the answer. As HOA president for 7 years, Karen controlled contract oversight. She flipped through papers that no longer mattered. It was a clerical oversight, she said sharply. But oversight doesn't erase consequences, especially when ego is involved. The board had negotiated with me privately over the past few days. Fair terms, market value, 20-year security. But here's the part Karen never thought through. To afford the new lease rate, HOA dues had to increase, not dramatically, but noticeably. The treasurer cleared his throat. To maintain clubhouse access under the new agreement, monthly dues will increase by 18%. Gasps. A woman stood up immediately. Why are we paying more? And that's when the truth landed. Because the previous lease expired 2 years ago and was never renewed. All eyes turned to Karen. This wasn't my doing. It was math. Karen tried one final defense. He pressured us into unfair terms. I stayed seated, calm. One of the board members responded instead. The lease rate reflects county market standards. We verified that independently. She wasn't losing to me anymore. She was losing to facts. Another resident stood. You called police on him over landscaping violations. And towing threats, someone added. And fines, another voice said. The room shifted. This was no longer about money. It was about misuse of power. The bylaws allowed for a vote of no confidence, a secret ballot, no speeches, no debate, just accountability. Ballots were counted in silence. When the final number was announced, Karen was removed as HOA president, not narrowly, overwhelmingly. For the first time since I moved to Lakeshore Pines, she had no authority, no clipboard, no power, just consequences. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. Karen requested a meeting at the clubhouse, the same building sitting on my land. The new acting president and 2 board members were present. Karen looked tired, smaller. I acted outside my authority, she said. Not to the board, to me. I escalated something that didn't require escalation. That was as close to an apology as Karen would ever come. I nodded. I never wanted conflict. I know, she replied quietly. And for the first time, she meant it. As part of the final agreement, I disclosed something publicly at the next HOA meeting. Not to intimidate, to clarify. My family trust owns the clubhouse parcel, I said. Pause. We also hold development rights on the North Ridge. Confused looks. The undeveloped 300 acres beyond the lake? That's ours. Gasps. Developers had tried for years to buy that land. If sold, it could double housing density, traffic, noise, property strain. But we never sold. We preserved it. And now they understood something important. I wasn't a threat to the community. I was the reason it hadn't been overdeveloped. The new lease was signed, 20 years, stable rate, fair increase. In exchange, I added one clause. The HOA would establish a homeowner advisory committee to prevent concentrated authority abuse. No more single-person control, no more unchecked enforcement, power distributed, transparency required. The residents voted in favor, almost unanimously. A month later, life felt different, quieter, more respectful. I sat on my dock one evening, watching the sunset over the lake. The clubhouse lights flickered on in the distance. Kids laughed near the shoreline. Boats drifted peacefully. Karen passed by on the walking trail. She hesitated for a moment, then gave a small nod. Not friendly, not hostile, just balanced. And that was enough. Here's what most people misunderstand about power. Ownership isn't about control. It's about responsibility. Karen thought authority came from a title, from enforcement letters, from calling police. But real authority? It comes from patience, documentation, and knowing exactly where the ground beneath someone's feet begins and ends. She tried to seize my cabin. Turns out, she was standing on my land the entire time.